Today we're going to talk about the final polls heading into Election Day and whether worries about Trump winning are warranted. And I interview legendary reporter Bob Woodward about the danger posed by Trump and his new book, War. And I'm also joined by DLCC President Heather Williams to discuss which state legislatures we're targeting to flip, the reverse coattails effect from state legislative candidates, and what's at stake in the states. I'm Brian Tyler Cohen, and you're watching No Lie. I know you're panicking. I know that you're looking at the polls and you're watching Kamala Harris's lead from a few weeks back disappear and that your mind automatically goes to Donald Trump is going to win. Here are my thoughts a week out. First of all, seeing Donald Trump up half a point in one state does not mean that he is going to win by half a point. I wish the polls were that perfect, but they're not. What they tell us is that this race is within the margin of error in all 7 swing states, meaning for all intents and purposes, it is tied. This is a jump ball. But we've got some good news here that we can glean. This is from the latest New York Times poll. About 15% of voters describe themselves as not fully decided, and Ms. Harris is leading with that group 42% to 32%. 2 weeks ago, Mr. Trump had a minute edge with undecided or persuadable voters, 36% to 35%. And let's be clear, these are the voters that both campaigns are going for right now. These are the undecided voters, the narrow sliver of the population that will decide the election. And if they're breaking for Kamala Harris by 10 points, that is at least some welcome news here. Here's another point that I think should put things into perspective here. Think about the margins in 2020. 0.2% in Georgia, 0.6% in Wisconsin, 1% in Pennsylvania. If you saw a poll showing Harris leading by only 0.2 of a point, you'd probably feel terrible, right? You'd have a pit in your stomach, the kind we've all felt over the last couple of weeks. But we've won races by those margins before. We won Georgia by 0.2 of a point. So the point I'm trying to make is that tight polls may make you feel nauseous, but there have been razor-thin margins in these races before, and what matters is that we've won. So even if the polls are exactly bang-on correct, showing a race that is way too close for comfort, that's not necessarily cause for panic or despair, because tight polls don't mean all is lost. It may very well just mean that we win a close race, and we have plenty of experience winning close races. But what's also become clear is that these close races are ours to lose in the same way that they're ours to win. And it's going to take us getting off Twitter and not doom scrolling all day and doing something about it. No one's going to save us in this election. The Washington Post and the New York Times are a testament to exactly that. When you've got the Democracy Dies in Darkness newspaper refusing to endorse in an election where one candidate incited an insurrection and vowed to terminate the Constitution because their billionaire owners are too far up Trump's ass or too worried about him retaliating against them in the event that he wins and wants to flex his autocratic muscles, that puts on full display the extent to which A, the moral collapse of our institutions is effectively asking for the end of democracy, and B, that it's going to be on us to save ourselves. The media is not coming to save us. The courts aren't swooping in to save us. The Supreme Court exists to pray at the altar of Trump. Prosecutors aren't swooping in to save us. Merrick Garland is more focused on the optics of politicization than actually combating crime. So it's on us. Which, frankly, is fine, because I promise you that on an individual basis, we've got a hell of a lot more persuasion power over our groups of people than the Washington Post or the New York Times or the LA Times does. So use that. I've said it all year. Find 1 or 2 or 3 people in your circles and make them your responsibility. Find somebody who hasn't voted, who isn't interested in politics, who maybe just turned 18 or 19 or 20, maybe somebody who voted for Trump before but is soured on him. Doesn't matter what it is, but make them your responsibility. There is no way that a flyer or a mailer or a campaign ad or a commercial or a newspaper or me will ever be more persuasive than you. So use it, because this election isn't going to be decided by millions of votes or hundreds of thousands of votes. It'll be decided by a few thousand votes. That's it. Our House races will be decided by a few thousand votes. Our Senate races by a few thousand votes. So don't think for a second that what you do this week won't matter. So look, I'll finish off with this. Do not look back 2 weeks from today and wish you'd done more. We're not asking you for the entire world here, but we're asking you to make the next week count. We have a rare opportunity here to change the course of history for this country, for the world, and for the planet. And those don't come around often, but it's going to come down to the effort that we put in right now. Next up are previews of my interviews with Bob Woodward and Heather Williams. Knowing what we know about him, how certain is it that if he loses in November, it's simply an inevitability that he again refuses to fold?
Well, I mean, President Biden has said in an interview that Biden does not believe there will be a peaceful transfer of power. It's the sitting president saying, we don't have a system that will ensure that peaceful transfer. Well, he's right because of Trump.
Trump knows he's lying with regard to the stolen election claims, but again, it's his nature to never admit defeat, to never fold. But you recount something in the book that struck me as delusional even by his standards. He called Alabama lawmaker Mo Brooks in the middle of Biden's presidency to publicly call for a special election to reinstate him, Donald Trump, as president. So is that Trump taking everybody for fools because he's just that confident that they'll do his bidding no matter how ridiculous that bidding is? Or is that Trump high on his own supply and thinking that he will actually be reinstated in, I believe it was August 2021, in accordance with the then believed QAnon conspiracy theories?
Well, his good friend, Senator Lindsey Graham of South Carolina, supporter, but Lindsey Graham is someone, like I quote him in this book, saying that Trump is increasingly erratic. And and there's a point when Lindsey Graham talks to Trump and said, now, look, you've got the people who think we didn't go to the moon, people who think the earth is flat, and he's focusing in on Trump's claim that, this year, saying he won in 2020, but there's no evidence to support that. And there are a couple of scenes in the book where Trump calls Lindsey Graham and said, see, I only brought up 2020 twice now. So he seems to know that this is a bit of a charade.
What is the outlook for state legislatures? There's three buckets that I want to talk about here. Are we looking to flip any state legislatures? Are we looking to protect any state legislatures? And are we looking to eliminate any Republican supermajorities?
Yes, all of those things.
Yeah,
here's the baseline outlook right now, right? We are 12 days out. Everything tells us things are very, very competitive. Our key targets are nested underneath really important presidential battlegrounds. So think holding majorities in Michigan and Pennsylvania, Minnesota, picking up majorities in places like Arizona and New Hampshire, and then looking at the Democratic governor's veto, both current and incoming Democratic governors in North Carolina, Wisconsin, and then Kansas.
Now, what are the implications for Wisconsin here? Because this is the first election cycle where Wisconsin's new legislative maps are going to be intact for the first time that I can remember.
Yeah, listen, voters in Wisconsin, for the first time in a really long time, actually get a say in their state government. That is such an important thing. There are races all across the state, again, sort of nicely nested underneath key presidential parts of the state where we need to turn out voters for the whole ballot, up and down.
To watch the full interviews with Bob Woodward and Heather Williams, click the thumbnails right here on the screen or check out the interviews playlist on my YouTube channel. You can also click the link on the screen to listen to the audio version of this episode, and of course to see more of my content, the subscribe button's on the screen as well.